What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this Patriots vs Falcons showdown slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. We have a huge day of DFS. We have the football showdown slate to cover and also NBA DFS. If you guys want to give that a watch, feel free to give that a watch right after this video. I'll be uploading that content in a few minutes. But first, we get to break down TJ's Patriots here versus the Falcons. I'm going to bring it to you right now. Before we start, I want to give a quick shout out to our favorite partner, PrizePicks. We are partnered with PrizePicks, and with that partnership, you guys get the benefit for just watching this video. And they're code using DGF for 100% match up to $100 on sign up. Anybody can do it. It's a fantasy site where you simply hit the over or under on any certain fantasy projection or single player prop, one of the easiest ways to play daily fantasy sports today. I do have a favorite lock here. I will be giving it to you at the very end of the video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, go ahead and download the PrizePicks app, sit back and watch a video breakdown for this DraftKings slate. One thing I like to do when we break down these showdown slates is I first like to take a look at the spread. The spread right now is a 6-point spread in the favor of the New England Patriots. It's also a 47 over under, which is relatively, I'd say it's pretty average in terms of the NFL scoring, which means, defenses can be in play. Me personally, you guys know my stance on defenses. I always full fade the defenses because they're carrying a decent amount of ownership more times than not. And if you guys take a look here, Patriots showing 13.1% ownership and the Falcons showing 8.6% ownership. So just goes to show you the Patriots are also very, very expensive. They rarely make it into the optimal. I'm talking about defenses in general. Patriots are projected to score 26.5 points. Falcons are projected to score 20 points. For a defense to straight up make the optimal, I mean, it'd have to be a bloodbath. There'd have to be a turnover, couple turnovers. There'd have to be a defensive touchdown for you to even consider that, especially in the DraftKings format. And again, that is my stance. You guys don't have to do that. I usually just take all the defenses out of the player pool because that is my personal edge. I feel like that is one of the biggest ones on the showdown slates. But without further ado, let's now focus on the skill positions. Go position by position here. We'll start out with the Patriots. They are favored by 6 points. Keep that in mind. So any lineup construction favoring them will probably end up being chalk. But that might not be the case here leading up through lock, and I'll tell you why here in a little bit. But starting out here with Mac Jones. Mac Jones has been on fire. Kind of. I mean, his team has been on fire. He hasn't really been in terms of fantasy production, but he doesn't have to be because that's not the way that the Patriots offense really rolls out. That being said, he's 57% owned here. Do I think he's worth 57% ownership? I don't think so. But that's the highest I've seen on a quarterback in a long time, with the exception of Lamar Jackson, where he's like 60% owned plus. But at 10.6K, yeah, I mean, Mac Jones does make a lot of sense. He's a game manager. As much as TJ hates me to say that, he just doesn't perform well in terms of his fantasy upside. He should be one of the highest scoring players on the slate. I don't think he's going to be the highest scoring player on the slate. That's very unlikely unless he scores a rushing touchdown. That being said, probably don't include him in your captain spot unless you're playing very, very small GPPs or cash games. But I do think you need to have him in your flex position, especially if you're playing cash, and GPPs might be a sharp fade. You could get crazy. But yeah, Mac Jones, I do think you absolutely need him, especially the 57% ownership and price tag here for cash games. Switching over to the running back position, I don't even want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about this picture because nobody knows what to do with this picture ever in the history of the Patriots. I mean, we can literally go back like 20 years and say the exact same thing about their three-headed monster of a running back situation. It's always been like this. And it's even worse here with Damien Harris back in the lineup. He is expected to start. He was in concussion protocol and was taken off of that and is expected to play tonight in his full workload. That being said, Damien Harris is the workhorse back here for this offense minus the passing game. So Damien Harris, as you guys can see, gets plenty of touches when he's on the field. 15 carries, 23, 14, 18, 14. That dominates the other two running backs that we will get to here in a little bit. But he barely gets any targets here in the receiving game. One target, two targets, one target. You guys get the picture here. So when you compare that to somebody like Ramondre Stevenson right below him, PPR upside is definitely up there. Keep in mind, this was last game where Damien Harris was out, so ignore the 20 carries. But if we look at the games where he has played with Damien Harris, 10, 8, 5, 11. He's gotten 2, 3 targets out of the backfield, and also Brandon Bolden getting a majority of the backfield targets. So we get 3, 2, 7. You guys get the picture here, right? So Ramondre Stevenson, Bolden, higher upside in terms of the PPR perspective, but how much are they going to need those two backs here in this game script where the Patriots are favored by 6 points? Probably not much. If they do get out to an early lead, Damien Harris should dominate this backfield. So, I mean, all of those considerations, this backfield is even riskier in this game than ever, because you can literally take a stab at any one of these three and make sense with it, especially if their price tags here. Brandon Bolden at $4,800. I would think in terms of an upside perspective and the value perspective, I like him the most. He's showing 6 projected points. These are the industry averages. Stevenson's projected more than Damian Harris here with 8, taking into consideration the PPR upside, and Damian Harris is also $200 more, but also showing more ownership because of the game script here with 6 points. You guys get where my head's at? Do you guys get where the industry averages heads are at here? All these projections are like really close to each other. I guess I like Brandon Bolden the most because of his value. I guess I like Damian Harris because he's the safest option, but Ramondre Stevenson technically has the most raw upside. So I like them all. I like them all here in terms of GPPs. I guess you have to play Damian Harris if you do land on him in cash here. At 30.3%, he's teetering on that GPP/cash category. It's really going to come down, I'll talk about it here on the other side, to the value on the other side that can be presented up through lock. But these running backs, it's just going to be a headache. So I do think you need to have some kind of exposure to one of these three running backs here and GPPs, maybe 2 if you can get them into your lineup. And I think you just need to look the other way here in cash. I don't know if these guys are going to be cash viable. Switching over to the wide receiver position, and probably a little bit more straightforward here. Jakobi Meyers caught his first NFL touchdown last game. 38.9% owned. He is the highest owned. He's also on the field the most out of these wide receivers. Jakobi Meyers on the season has been averaging 86.7% of the snaps here. Played 72 last game. They didn't need a lot of 3 wide receiver sets last game. So Aguilar, 70% of the snaps. And then we take a look at Kendrick Bourne, 43, 53. He's been bouncing between 30 and 50, high 60% range there. So Aguilar, another great value play here. I do like him at a 5K price tag because, again, Patriots are a very balanced team. They will utilize all 3 of these wide receivers. N'Keal Harry's another guy that sees the field somewhat. I don't know if he's going to be worth it at that $600 price tag here, though. He's not going to play that often. They probably won't utilize him as much because, again, Patriots should be ahead the majority of the game. About 25 to 30%, last game, I would ignore that 52%. That was an outlier. We can expect about 20 to 40% of the snaps there for N'Keal Harry. So technically, I don't mind him. He technically is questionable here for this game versus Atlanta. So he doesn't have a projection until we hear that he's actually in. We might end up going to somebody else like Gunner here, who also sees the field at a $200 price tag. Regardless, I don't like the raw upside of these really cheap guys just because they're not on the field that often. I do prefer they're more solidified targets here with Jakobi Meyers, Kendrick Bourne, and Aguilar. They aren't really standout plays to me. I'm just kind of neutral on them. All their price tags really do make sense with the amount of time that they're on the field. Aguilar is probably my favorite because of the amount of time he is on the field, the second most out of these wide receivers. Second most, yes, right behind Jakobi Meyers at 5K, and he's showing a little bit more ownership than Kendrick Bourne. So Jakobi Meyers and Aguilar, I definitely do think that they are cash viable, especially if you land on them. Jakobi Meyers is the safer bet, and I do think Aguilar is the better value play. Then switching over to the tight end position, this is where the value plays start to pop, in my opinion. And in terms of GPP upside, I really do like them because they're both showing very low ownership. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are heavily involved in the receiving game, which is something you love to see here, especially at the price tags. Hunter Henry is cheaper than both Jakobi Meyers and Kendrick Bourne. So take that into consideration. He's also on the field about 50 to 60% of snaps. Last game he played 82. I think that's an outlier. So yeah, he's playing between 60 to 80% of the snaps here if you look back over the previous 5 weeks. Hunter Henry, just a reception monster. I mean, he's been getting 4, 3, 3, 3, 4, 2 targets through the past contests, which are outperforming some of his wide receivers here on the other side of, or on the other position here. So I do like him here at 17.9%. I think the 7K price tag does make a lot of sense. They only have him projected for 7 points, but if you guys look back at the wide receivers for the Patriots, we have 10 and 8 and a 6 projection. So he's technically projected to outperform one of those 3 wide receivers. And then we talk about Jonnu Smith, who's an even better value target. Again, he only has to get the 4.8K points or 4.8 points. He hit 7.7, 5.2, 10.4, so he can do it. I think he makes for a viable last piece in cash here. I think his value does make sense. Right now, we have him projected at 5 fantasy points. He's averaging 5.4 fantasy points on the season. Definitely don't mind him in terms of value, and I really do like both of these guys just as overall value plays on this side of the ball. I think Jonnu Smith is technically my favorite value play here from the Patriots. They didn't really have too much value in general. I think whatever Patriots you happen to land on, this is kind of weird. You kind of focus your build around the Atlanta Falcons, which I'll show you why here in just a second. And then whatever value or whatever other pieces you happen to land on here from the Patriots, I think you just got to plug and play. at least for cash, because these guys are just very straightforward. Their pricing makes sense. Mac Jones isn't supposed to be the highest scoring player. Like, it's a very straightforward picture. There's really no edge on this side of the ball. The edge will be on the other side of the ball. By the way, I got to talk about the kicker here. Nick Folk, I do like in terms of value. He's probably my overall favorite value play in terms of just the overall play. I'm not even talking about the skill position players. I'm talking about the overall play here on the slate. Nick Folk, 4.4K. He's averaging 10.3 points here on the season, which is more than 2 times his value, which is what we're looking for in showdown slates. We're going to go ahead and roll that projection in at 10.3, 22.8% ownership. And I'll tell you guys right now, without skipping forward, that he does pop up in a lot of my builds. So Nick Folk, 4.4K, I feel like it's a very safe go-to spot. By the way, I think he's questionable as of right now. Yeah, he's technically questionable, so we have to pay attention to that. I do think he suits up for this team, and he's my favorite kicker here on the slate. Now, switching over to the Atlanta Falcons, this is where the picture starts to get a little bit messier here. Matt Ryan, 10.8K, is technically projected more, 0.5 points more than Mac Jones, but is lower owned. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make sense. Matt Ryan, again, 15.5 points. You got to think he has more raw upside than Mac Jones. I get it. The game script does favor the Patriots. They are favored by 6 points, but that also means that Matt Ryan should be throwing the ball more often than not. So Matt Ryan, you just got to think historically does outscore Mac Jones more often than not here. I get that he's playing a good defense here in the New England Patriots, hence the reason why he's only projected 15.5 points. But I do like Matt Ryan's overall upside a little bit more than Mac Jones. Don't shoot me, TJ. Again, Mac Jones has a better matchup, but he's a game manager. He doesn't have to throw the ball. Matt Ryan has to throw the ball because he has Mike Davis in the backfield. That's why he has to throw the ball, and he has a lot of better weapons there at the wide receiver position. But let's now switch over to the running back position here. All right, this is where we have to start paying attention to the injury news, because Cordero Patterson is technically questionable. Right now, we have him projected for 14 points if he does play, and he's also very high owned. I hate Cordero Patterson. I hate him. And we're going to look at this together because a lot of you haven't really seen the backstory and why I hate Cordero Patterson. Keep in mind, he's having the best season of his career, but just look at these snap counts. 33%, 33, 42, 30, 59, 73. Okay, he played a decent amount in that game. 60, 56, 28% last game. You look at this and he's a wide receiver 3 at best. Those snap counts just don't add up. But when you take a look at his DraftKings scoring and his price tag at 10.2K, the guy has absolutely been crushing it. And overall, he's having one of the better fantasy point seasons of any wide receivers or running backs, whatever you want to consider him at this point. A hybrid guy, 22.6, 18.2, 14.1, 18.4. This guy literally hasn't had a floor game, if you take out the 4.9, below 8.7. And that's just unheard of. And that's when he played 33% of the snaps there in week 1. So Cordero Patterson, I just hate talking about him because, to me, he looks like the sharpest fade of all time every single game, but he just ends up doing well. But you guys know I'm a stat guy. That's the reason I hate Cordero Patterson, because his snap percentages don't make sense. He should never do well, and he always does well. So the Atlanta Falcons, Cordero Patterson, it takes me a while to say that. He is cash viable if he does play. Okay, he is questionable, so that's what throws things through a loop. I know he's not showing the little injury tag here right now, but the coach, Arthur Smith, has already said here that he's a game-time decision. And he has been limited at practice. So Patterson, 14-point projection. If he is playing, then yes, very much so. You should get him into your lineup, as much as I hate to say that. But if he is ruled out, there's a bump there to the wide receiver position, to the running backs, both Wayne Gallman at $8,400 and also Mike Davis, who should see more snaps. Wayne Gallman, throw last week out. That doesn't make sense, okay? Just throw it completely out because he got 15 attempts. It was a blowout. The only reason, and this has come from the coach, Arthur Smith again, the only reason he saw the field 15 times or got 15 attempts was because they were getting blown out. Okay, so Wayne Gallman, not worth the 8.4K price tag at all. Unless Cordero Patterson does sit, and then you have to consider him in GBPs. But even that, the 8.4K price tag is very expensive. Mike Davis at 5.8K would get a boost there if Patterson does sit, and I know he sucks. He's a puddle right now. 20.9% ownership. That will go up if Patterson does sit, and his fantasy projection will probably be around 10 points or so. So I do like Mike Davis in cash if Patterson does sit. If Patterson does play, I like him the most here at this position, if that makes sense, okay? Switching over to the wide receiver position, because we know that Patterson's technically a wide receiver as well. All these guys get a bump here if Patterson does sit. Right now, the price tags on these guys are very, very cheap, and I do like them here, just straight up. I think this is where you need to attack the value, because these guys will see the field more often than not, and they will probably get more targets in the other side of the ball if the Patriots do get out to an early lead. Russell Gage is technically showing the most ownership here, $6,600. I do like him the most. I also like Zacchaeus. If you guys look at the snap counts here, it does make sense. We have Gage on the field the most here, 65%. We have Sharp also on the field here, 57, and Zacchaeus about 43. So these two split. The one guy I like the most is going to be Sharp, and at 5.75 points, he's just 0.25 points off that projection here of Zacchaeus. So Sharp is my favorite value play in general with the most upside other than the kicker from Nick Folk. So I do like him here at $3,600 at 5.75 points. He's going to be my favorite overall play on the slate in terms of value. If Patterson does sit, then it's going to give a tremendous boost to all these guys. And honestly, your build should be about a 3-3 or 4-2 Atlanta stack. The way that these price tags do come out, done a little bit of number crunching myself. So these three do like in terms of value. I think you do prioritize them over the wide receivers from the Patriots, if that makes sense, okay? Because of their value and overall upside there, they should see a tremendous amount of targets. Last but not least here, we do have the tight end picture, and another thing to talk about here is Hurst. He has been ruled out here for this matchup against New England. Lee Smith is a guy that is next in line, $200. I don't think he has tremendous upside, but he should see the field about 40 to 50% of the snaps. We have him at a 4-point projection. Hayden Hurst was actually heavily involved in the offense, as you guys can see, getting decent targets there for a tight end number 2. So I do like Lee Smith as a last piece. If you happen to land on him, especially if you're trying to get a stud into that captain spot, like Cordero Patterson, if he does play, come back with Lee Smith. $200 could save you some salary. I think that's more of a GPP option. He's only showing 6.8% ownership. But Kyle Pitts is the guy that you want to target. You need to have him as well in your cash games lineup. He's showing the most ownership, even over that of Patterson. We have him right now projected at 12 points. Target monster. He is seeing the most snaps here on the team, even over some of the wide receivers here at 61%, 75, 83, 67. He literally is a wide receiver in a tight end's body. So nothing else needs to be said here for Kyle Pitts. He is a cash lock. If you're looking at one specific overall player from the Atlanta Falcons roster other than Matt Ryan, it's going to be Kyle Pitts. Switching over to the kicker here, we have Koo. Koo is fitting some of my builds. I do prefer Nick Folk on the other side of the ball. He's showing 15.9% ownership. If you're looking for a double kicker build, don't mind that. We know a lot of these games do turn into a double kicker matchup. Don't mind him. More of a GPP target there, especially if you think that the Atlanta Falcons are going to get out to an early lead. But that's it. That will wrap up my breakdown here for DraftKings. One thing I like to do is take a look at lineup construction, how these builds are definitely coming out. It looks like Mac Jones, Matt Ryan, and Nick Folk are showing in the majority of my builds. So I'm going to start out by saying that's going to be my cash core. I do think that Mac Jones is going to be a heavier owned captain. I do like Matt Ryan in terms of overall upside. I actually would prefer him in the captain spot if I'm playing cash. We'll see how that kind of looks leading up through lock. Patterson, if he does play, showing up a lot in my builds, and same thing with Koo, Smith, and Kyle Pitts in that order. So those guys I am prioritizing. Now you guys see why I do prefer more Falcons than Patriots, just because of the way that the lineups are coming out and because of their price tags. Lee Smith with that $200 price tag does prove to be a good last piece in cash, especially if you're trying to get up to a captain spot here, a good stud captain spot here with Matt Ryan or Mac Jones. But now let's switch over to my favorite prize pick entry here on the slate. My favorite is going to be Damian Harris over 7.5 points here. They should get out to an early lead. I've said that many times here during the video, and that's going to favor the game script of Damian Harris. He should see about 15 plus carries, and he should easily cover that score, especially if he scores a touchdown here at 7.5 points. And that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this content. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NFL content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.